In the last episode of the Pax Romana podcast, we talked about Caracalla, the emperor who may have murdered his own brother in cold blood and then enacted a series of sweeping reforms within the first couple of years that he obtained power. He introduced a new coin to the Roman monetary system. Well, that coin was highly debased. It ultimately undermined both the Roman economy, which was already struggling, and Caracalla's own reputation. The other thing that Caracalla did, which we talked about as well, was he extended Roman citizenship to all free inhabitants of the Roman Empire. Caracalla does not appear to have been particularly bright, nor interested in leadership whatsoever, and it appears that he did not think through the ramifications of extending citizenship to so many people all at once. In today's episode, we see the further degradation of Caracalla. Caracalla became increasingly emotionally unstable, and as he took a grand tour of the empire, he decided that he would rather murder his own subjects than bring them benefits. He would be forever remembered as one of the worst emperors in Roman history. We will talk about the tumultuous end of Caracalla's reign on this episode of the Pax Romana podcast. Episode 67, Rome's Not-So-Great Alexander. Folks, I want to remind you that I have a fledgling YouTube channel where at least once a week I am posting some kind of excerpt from a lecture from my university classroom. I'm finishing up a course right now on the Roman Republic, and so I'm posting some short videos from that course up on my YouTube channel. You can find me on YouTube just by searching for Professor Colin Elliott or Colin Elliott or my username, which is Prof, P-R-O-F, C-P-E. I've got videos on Cicero, on Pompey and Crassus, and other key events in the late Roman Republic. And if you like any of those videos, please do actually click the like button. It helps. Please do subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment if you wish to as well. All of those things help the algorithm, both on YouTube. They also help, of course, with the podcast. So if you like this episode, when you're done, please leave a comment or like the episode. Let's get to today's episode. Caracalla extended citizenship to the entirety of the free Roman Empire in AD 212. Within a year, he decided to leave the city of Rome, and he would leave it for good. He never returned to Rome after his departure in AD 213. Now, Caracalla's brother and co-emperor Geta was dead, and he did not have an obvious male that he could leave the empire to. He did not have an heir. He did, however, have a bright, intelligent, and politically astute mother. Her name was Julia Domna. And even senators who wrote at the time thought her a very impressive woman and an important political figure in Caracalla's administration. This is what, for example, the Senator Cassius Dio said about Julia Domna. She gave much excellent advice, and Caracalla appointed her to receive petitions and to have charge of his correspondence in both languages, except in the most important cases, and Caracalla used to include her name in terms of high praise, together with his own and that of the legions, in his letters to the Senate, stating that she was well. She held public receptions for all the most prominent men. She devoted herself more and more to the study of philosophy with these men. That's Cassius Dio's Roman History, Book 78. Cassius Dio is speaking from firsthand experience. He knew both this woman, Julia Domna, and her son Caracalla. Julia Domna is an effective communicator. She's interested in philosophy, and she does the social work of Roman politics, entertaining the men that Caracalla really should be entertaining. We can contrast the way that Julia Domna received political visitors with what Cassius Dio tells us about Caracalla. Quote, "He would send us word that he was going to hold court or transact some other public business directly after dawn, but he would keep us waiting until noon and often until evening and wouldn't even admit us to the vestibule, so that we had to stand around outside somewhere, and usually at some late hour he decided that he would not even exchange greetings with us that day. He was driving chariots, slaying wild beasts, fighting as a gladiator, drinking, nursing the resultant headaches, mixing great bowls of wine for the soldiers that guarded him inside the palace." The contrast is obvious. Julia Domna was attentive, while Caracalla was busy with nonsense and wouldn't even meet with senators, wasting their time, treating them as though they didn't matter. There are plenty of examples of coins that survive from this period with Julia Domna on them. They don't even mention Caracalla. This is a truly remarkable thing that we don't see too often in patriarchal Roman society. I especially like a sestertius. This is a bronze coin that was minted in 217 AD. On the obverse, or the head side, we see Julia Domna with her name and titles, Julia, Paia, Felix, Augusta, that is Julia, the most fortunate empress and pious one. But on the other side of the coin is an additional title that Julia Domna was awarded by the Roman Senate, and it reads as follows: Mother of the Emperors, Mother of the Senate, and Mother of the Country. The Roman moneyer who minted this coin chose these titles and this theme because he believed that it would make this coin circulate, that it would give the coin legitimacy. And that means that a lot of people must have felt this way about Julia Domna, that she was a true power in the Roman Empire, and that she had an almost patron-like role, not only over the sitting emperor, her son, Caracalla, but also over the Senate and indeed over the entire country. And so while Caracalla was off on his adventures from 213 onward, Julia Domna held down the fort, and apparently did so quite capably. Now, I mentioned that Caracalla had left Rome. Why did he do this? Well, at some point, Caracalla got it into his head that he would be a new Alexander the Great. And this was a common thing among Roman emperors. We saw this, for example, when we looked at Trajan, who thought of himself as an Alexander the Great. Only in that case, Trajan actually did conquer, for a brief period of time, lands in Persia. Caracalla would have no such luck. But that didn't stop him from play acting, and that's essentially what Caracalla was doing. Again, here is Cassius Dio talking about Caracalla's love of Alexander the Great. Quote, "He was so enthusiastic about Alexander that he used certain weapons and cups which he believed had once been his, and he also set up many likenesses of Alexander, both in the camps and in Rome himself. Caracalla organized a phalanx composed entirely of Macedonians, 16,000 strong, and named it Alexander's Phalanx, and equipped it with the arms that warriors had used in Alexander's day. Caracalla actually wrote to the Senate that Alexander had come to life again in the person of the emperor, and that he might live on once more in Caracalla, having had such a short life before. Caracalla even took about with him numerous elephants, that in this respect also he might seem to be imitating Alexander." That's Cassius Dio's Roman history. Caracalla left Rome to visit sites associated with Alexander the Great. He collected artifacts associated with Alexander. He claimed he was even, according to Cassius Dio, a reincarnated Alexander. And just like Alexander, he made his way to the site of Troy and sacrificed to Achilles, the demigod that was famous because of the stories of Homer. Alexander had done this same thing before embarking on his war against Persia. And Caracalla also had in mind that he too would take over Persia just like Alexander the Great. Now, it's easy to just dismiss Caracalla's behavior as that of any typically delusional or troubled emperor, and there are plenty of them that we have already looked at on this podcast. But there is some evidence, both in the writings of Cassius Dio, but also in the Greek historian Herodian, that Caracalla was haunted by nightmares. And in these dark dreams, his dead father, the Emperor Septimius Severus, and his murdered brother, Geta, would chase Caracalla, trying to get him. The irony is that even though Caracalla apparently murdered his brother, Geta still haunted Caracalla's dreams. And Caracalla was superstitious. He believed in the supernatural, in magic, and in divine retribution. And it may be that not only was Caracalla running towards Alexander the Great, but at the same time, he may have also been running away from Rome in order to get away from the life that reminded him of his brother and his father. Unfortunately for Caracalla, he had to deal with reminders of his brother even on the other end of the Roman Empire. In 215, Caracalla found his way to Egypt, and he stayed over the winter in the capital city of Alexandria. And either before Caracalla arrived or just around the time that he did, some of the actors in Alexandria thought it would be a good idea to put on a comic play. And in the play was a scene from that fateful dinner where Gita was killed. One of the actors portrayed Caracalla murdering his brother. It was obviously meant as a joke, but Caracalla did not find it funny. And so when a delegation of Alexandria's leading citizens came out to meet Caracalla, he had them all killed on the spot. He then sent a message into the city. Anyone who was not a citizen would be allowed to leave. And then just after that, Cassius Dio tells us what happened next. Quote, Caracalla utterly destroyed the whole population of Alexander's city. For, hearing that he was ill-spoken of and ridiculed by them for various reasons, not the least of which was the murder of his brother, he marched into the city. He slaughtered so many people that he did not even say anything about the total number, since all had deserved to suffer this fate. People were being murdered in all parts of the city simultaneously, by night and day. It was impossible to distinguish anybody. The foreigners were expelled except the merchants. Then he abolished the spectacles and the public feasts of the Alexandrians and ordered that Alexandria should be divided by a wall and occupied by guards at frequent intervals in order that inhabitants might no longer visit one another freely. That's Cassius Dio's Roman history. Caracalla's soldiers were loose in the city, allowed to kill and pillage indiscriminately, and Caracalla even decided to build a wall in the city to break it apart and make life even more miserable for those who lived. By the year 216, Caracalla would initiate a campaign against the Parthian Empire. And Herodian tells us that he engaged this campaign in bad faith. He had no reason for the war other than a desire to imitate Alexander, and he was unfaithful to the Parthians, at one point asking them for peace talks and then attempting to kill members of the Parthian delegation. Finally, in early 217, near the site of Carrhae, which today is called Harran, a site in southeastern Turkey, Caracalla met his end. While marching with his army in a litter, Caracalla stepped outside to take care of some business. An assassin named Julius Martialis crept up behind Caracalla and murdered him. And then, shortly after that, the Praetorian Prefect, who was with Caracalla, a man named Macrinus, then had the assassin murdered before he could say much at all. And the whole thing is kind of reminiscent of the JFK affair. Many historians believe there was a conspiracy here, that Macrinus, the Praetorian Prefect, was actually working with the assassin and then turned around and had him killed before he could incriminate Macrinus. Within 4 days of the death of Caracalla, with nobody left to succeed him, Macrinus was made emperor. But there are questions. Would Roman elites, senators, but also the people of Rome tolerate yet another new dynasty following an assassination? We will find out on the next episode of the Pax Romana podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Pax Romana podcast. For more information, including a list of primary sources and further reading, check the show notes. Music by Red Productions and Exocor. Follow Professor Colin Elliott on X at ProfCPE or email colin@paxromanapodcast.com. Listen to more episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or just about anywhere podcasts are available. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Pax Romana podcast.